Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Global Innovation Readiness webinar series, Innovating for a Better World. And our topic today will be on inclusive leadership for multicultural innovation. So we look forward to welcoming speakers John Metselaar, our global leadership and innovation leader at Global Minds Network, and our special guest speaker, Alexia Cassimatis, who's the Global Talent Development Director at Egis, or Aegis.
Hello. Yes, Aegis.
Yes. And I'll be your host. I'm Karina Jensen, founder and executive director of Global Minds Network. So before we get started, a few tips for your readiness journey. Everybody's familiar with Zoom webinars, so I don't need to remind you about the Q&A tool. We encourage you to pose lots of questions, so you can enter them there in the Q&A or chat if you have thoughts, observations, you want to share info with participants. Then we'll stay muted throughout the first part of the webinar. So we'll have two presentations and then a brief panel discussion, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Before we get started, just want to make sure sound is okay and to say hello to everybody out there. See where in the world you're calling in from. So I'm just gonna, if you could just do a check or chat box, let me know. Can you hear us or hear me all right? Anybody out there? Where are you? Anybody in the chat? No? Anybody out there? Atlanta, Brussels, Denmark. Great. Okay, good. I'm hearing sound is okay. Netherlands, Bangalore, India. Excellent. All right. And Paris. Okay, so we're going around the world. US, Europe, Asia, Toulouse. So we have a few from France, and we're going back to Canada now, back to North America. So great to see everybody. Excellent. All right, so we are going to get started then, kick off the journey. And about our webinar series, our Global Innovation Readiness series that we launched last year, and we brought back by popular demand, simply because there's such an interest in exploring how can we better collaborate and innovate in this changing world. And we explored that last year, and then this year we thought, well, let's look at the theme innovating for a better world, because as we move out of a post-pandemic or phase or after the pandemic, we'd like to see how can we create better opportunities to collaborate and innovate. So we're on the fourth stop of our journey. As you see, we've covered many topics from global innovation strategies to SDGs, and coming up, we'll have team collaboration and global readiness. But for this webinar, we'll focus on inclusive leadership. A bit about us, Global Minds Network. We're an international advisory who enables leaders and teams to collaborate and innovate for global and local impact. And we have a national advisory team who represents international leaders, innovators, change makers who share a vision of facilitating multicultural collaboration and global innovation. We serve as your global mind trust, and our advisors and thought leaders bring seasoned experience in leading innovation and international teams at the intersection of global innovation, leadership, multicultural collaboration, and digital transformation. And we embrace a framework, a unique framework that's been designed for global innovation readiness. So to accompany you on the journey from concept to execution, we have all of the knowledge, information, training, and consulting solutions to take you through every phase of that innovation journey. And that's powered by our collaboration drivers, where we can help you improve that journey through vision, through inclusive leadership and strategic co-creation, which shapes the dialogue. active and dynamic dialogue through improved team collaboration, knowledge sharing, and learning. And that shapes the space, which improves a global innovation culture and team climate for execution success. So we're ready for our webinar theme, Inclusive Leadership for Multicultural Innovation. And the journey that we'll take you on today will move you through the 4 layers. And this is a journey that we have observed and have demonstrated through research, through experience, that every leader needs to think about these 4 layers, especially today in this changing landscape, as we've seen a very global, dynamic, turbulent landscape. It starts with those core values, the leadership ethos, how to develop those values for inclusive leadership. And that takes you through the next layer of, as you're leading teams around the world, working locally or globally, what are those cultural dimensions that you need to think about, the impact of cultural differences, different approaches, and that is only the foundation. Next, you need to think about, well, how do I interact in this dynamic environment as I'm shifting teams in this digitally connected environment? You need to think about global mindset, cultural intelligence, and even that's not enough for today's environment. So you need to look at the final layer, which is, what is your global innovation context? So that's what we really need to think about today. And our interest is exploring, well, how can you lead in this global, multicultural, and digitally connected environment, and do that in a successful way? How to inspire and engage those teams around the world. So the program today will be very interesting because we'll have my colleague, John Metselaar, our global innovation leadership leader, who will share some very valuable perspectives, his perspectives on what's important for the core. Where do we start for inclusive leadership? And then we'll have our guest speaker, Alexia Cassimatis, our Global Talent Development Director, Egis, who will share that journey. What do you need to think about as you move through those layers? What are the challenges and opportunities, and what are the practices that are important for developing inclusive leadership in an organization? So we will get started now. I'd like to introduce my colleague, John Metselaar, and our global leadership and innovation expert here at Global Minds Network. And John has enjoyed an impressive career, a 30-year global career at Procter & Gamble that has brought him around the world. And he has been able to enjoy the development of many interesting initiatives and exciting leaders, with his last, I think the last stop on his career to developing an innovation center. And today he has enjoyed leadership in many areas, leading across academic, nonprofit, and organizational disciplines, to share his enthusiasm for leadership and the power of connecting. He has a unique philosophy, and I'm excited to introduce him and for him to share more about his perspectives on inclusive leadership.
You can see that I'm retired, right? Because I look much more tan than I did on the picture over there.
Yeah, lucky you. So I'll let you take it away, John.
Let me see here. How do I now go and share? Hang on, wait a sec. I need to go back to full view because I was not looking there. Share my screen. Here we go. Okay, let's talk a bit about leadership and inclusive leadership. That's indeed, as I always call or mention, that it's a bit of my passion. I'm fascinated by leadership. It's so important and so elusive and so challenging at the same time. And I want to start by just getting us grounded in that we're living in this, actually, no, I should actually get here, but the topic is the new leadership for the new world is inclusive. That's what I'm submitting here in this talk. And then we go here, which is getting us grounded in, since I started in my new life, post P&G, I've been coining this term VUCA, which many of you will know what it means by now. When I started it, nobody raised a hand when I asked what it means, but by now it's pretty much common. A volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And we were living that before COVID came from left field. And so now I call it, we're living in a VUCA on steroids world. And the question that I think we need to answer here is much more challenging than before: is how do we generate value and drive growth in this new world? And so in this new world, we need a few new things. First of all, we need to get in touch with the new reality. We've been conditioned to have a leader who gives us direction. The leader as the answer, knows exactly what to do, and the organization follows. Well, that's not the case anymore. Things change way too fast. Already before COVID and since COVID, that's become the speed of change has even further accelerated. So that obviously puts a whole different spin on where an organization, where a company, where a business really is, right? And that means that we need a new culture. When the boss doesn't give us any direction on where to go, then as Mr. Sims, Peter Sims calls it in his little book, Small Bets, we got to learn to do things. We got to do things to learn what to do. To go and we need to get to a culture which I call experimentation and learning. It was interesting. I was in a panel conversation recently with somebody who said we should stop this R&D stuff. Or stop calling it R&D, research and development. He said we should call it ENS. And I go like, ENS? What does it mean, ENS? He said experimentation and skill. And that's really what I try to visualize here. We need to go and create a culture where experimentation is where it starts, learning is the center, and then ultimately when we get it right, we scale. So go design, go test, go fail, go learn, repeat that a few times probably. You don't get it right the first time. Then as soon as you have it right, you think you have it right, then when you succeed, decide quickly and scale fast. That's the new culture that we need to create. Now with that new culture comes a new charter. Who's going to do the experimentation? The leaders? No, of course not. The leader cannot do the experimentation. We need everyone in the game. And that's a bit of a problem when you know that Gallup does the survey every year. 12 index engagement survey, or 12 questions towards an engagement index, right? Every year, 30% of people across a large number of organizations are engaged. 20% is actively disengaged, which means they're sabotaging much of the work, much of the stuff that goes on in the company. And 50% is just looking like a deer in the headlight, waiting for the salary slip to come in. And by the way, these are US numbers. For those in Europe and in Asia, it's 16% engaged, 1/6, so that's even half. That's the reality. And so if we want to go and create that culture of experimentation, then we better go and work hard to get everyone in the game. And that makes the role of a leader very different. The role of a leader is, again, not setting direction anymore. The role of a leader is taking the purpose of a company, setting the boundaries in which you want your people to go and experiment, and then coach and guide and steer them within those boundaries in a way that, obviously, if you want to go and get people engaged, then you got to focus on inclusion. Everyone valued, everyone needs to feel valued, but that's only where it starts. And everyone needs to be empowered to go and get things done. So new world, new leader, inclusion becomes a top priority. I sometimes call this inverted leadership, right? It's not anymore leader telling what to do. It's a leader focusing on being a gardener, lifting up the organization, enabling the organization by including everybody, every single one. So then I step back and I go, okay, well, with that given, let's look at leadership. And I started to, obviously, my course, I'm a professor of management practice, and my course is about leading and living innovation. And more I got myself deeply into what do leaders really do? And then I asked myself the question as well, who are they, or who should they be? And so I developed this leadership model here, this leadership framework. And the first part is the obvious one. Many of you will go and recognize this, the 3 E's of leadership, or the 5 E's of leadership. I came up with 4 as it happened. Leaders do, they envision, this is the high end, this is about purpose and strategies. They enable, roll up the sleeves, and help the organization to go and get things done toward execution and commercialization. One of my previous CEOs at P&G always used to say, execution is the only strategy the consumer is ever seeing. So don't stay stuck at that first box. Make sure that you also go and help the organization towards excellence and execution. But even that's not enough. You also need to go and do the last part, which is working with the humans to go and empower and engage them, as per the point that I already made. So I can talk about that already for probably a couple of hours, but that's not what I want to do here. I want to go and zero in on who should leaders be. That's arguably even more fundamental. And then I developed this, and that's the framework that Karina was talking about. I developed this mind, heart, gut model. And so leaders need to develop a growth mindset. Leaders need to become authentic, and you see the heart being presented there in a nice icon, and that's significant. I'll get into details. And then leaders need to make sure that they walk the talk and create a psychologically safe environment where everybody feels safe in their guts. So let me go and take you through that left part of it, right? The inclusive leadership, the essence of it in terms of who leaders are or should be: growth mindset, heart, getting to authenticity, and then creating that psychological safety that ultimately is the basis for the inclusion efforts. I see anybody chat. Does anybody have a question, or is everything okay? Okay, good. Thank you. Let me go and take this away. All right. So let's start. Let's start with mindset. Oh, and now it doesn't click anymore, obviously, because let's go and start with mindset. So I want to start with a quote by a guy called Henry Ford, who you know as an industrialist, one of those visionary leaders who knew exactly what he wanted in the past, which is now outdated. He was also a bit of a philosopher, and he coined this quote: "Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right." I find that very profound, which really says where you're going in life is controlled by your mindset. And that is that's the basis for these insights, which were first publicized by Carol Dweck in her book Mindset. And so there's really two sides to how people are born or conditioned very early on in life. They can either be in a fixed mindset where they believe that intelligence and abilities are set in stone. And as a consequence, they go through life proving that to everybody. They go through life with a desire for validation and looking smart. They are very keen to go and get socially recognized and accepted and admired. And that becomes a priority for them. Interestingly, if you are born or conditioned on the other side with a growth mindset, you feel you have a very different attitude to life. Your intelligence and abilities, you believe that intelligence and abilities can be grown through effort. And as a consequence, you go and really focus on that. You're keen to challenge and stretch yourself. And that leads to very, very different ways to fill in your life, and obviously leads to a different place where you will be ending up. Why is this growth mindset? And obviously, I guess you're going to see already that I'm going to push towards the need for the growth mindset in today's world. But why is that so important? Well, this growth mindset is taking the explosion of knowledge, or actually, at least the explosion of data that you can turn into information, into knowledge if you do a good job, into new insights and ideas. And that can lead to those opportunities on which you lead that experimentation that I mentioned earlier on. And you do that within the box that the leadership goes and creates, the where to play choices, the boundaries, the guardrails for your organization, so that they don't go and work for 2, 3, 5 years, come up with a really great innovation, and the company is going to look at, but what are we going to do with this? This is not where we want to play. And that ultimately leads to, hey, there's learning again. That leads to both results and learning. You develop this continuous learning spiral for hopefully sustainable results. So that's why that's the basis for why growth mindset is so important. And so let's look at a few dimensions of this. First of all, the first line is what I mentioned earlier. And intelligence is static; it can be developed. The fixed mindset person would avoid any challenge. Why? Because if they don't meet the challenge, they're going to be found out, and that's a social embarrassment. Growth mindset people don't really care about that very much. They just go, give me the challenge, I want to grow. Obstacles. Oh, the obstacle is for a fixed mindset person, the excuse to hop out. You see, I never really like this challenge. I'm out of here. While the growth mindset individual would go, oh man, I love obstacles. This is how you learn. I actually get a kick out of how I get through it, around it, over it, underneath it, whatever it takes. Why would I put in an efforts? This says a fixed mindset person. I'm born with it, right? And of course, the growth mindset person know that effort is the path to mastery. Feedback. Oh my God, how difficult is it to give some even constructive, positive feedback sometimes to a fixed mindset person. And while a growth mindset person, they go and like one of my last hires at P&G, after even earlier, like 4 months in the company, he comes to my desk. He said, Metselaar, you haven't given me zero feedback. How can I learn if you don't do this? So that was a bit of feedback to me, which I took. And then the success of others, the world is fixed, so somebody else is successful. Oh, less opportunity for me to be successful. And for a growth mindset individual, success of others is mere inspiration to go and do better and more. So the obvious question that you, I think, want to ask yourself, and not your spouse or not your boss, first self, where are you standing today in this? And this is a continuum. It's not like you're on one side an extreme or the other side of the extreme. You will probably be somewhere a bit more towards the right, a bit more towards the left for the readers, whatever you are. But the key thing here is the result. The result is when when you are in a fixed mindset and you cannot get out of it, you're just limiting your own potential. But you also generate a closed environment. You don't want to be challenged. You don't want to be embarrassed in your mind, in your view. And people with the growth mindset, they reach higher potentials. They reach higher potential, and they also create an environment of opportunity around themselves. They like to be the least smart person in the room. And that's a fundamental difference between those two. So that's on mindset. And you know what? This is something that we have done at a Global Minds Network in the Innovation Readiness Study. And what we're seeing is that what's really, really important for leaders is it's not only about creativity. It's not only about getting different cultures together. It's not only about sustainability or including digital. It's actually all of the above that leaders need to go and apply. So you need to apply that growth mindset to that holistic nature of the world around you for you to be able to unleash innovation and create that value and growth and generate growth that I mentioned at the start of the conversation. So that's on mindset. Look forward to more discussion, hopefully, when we do Q&A. Let's now look at the heart, and because the mind is not enough these days. Maybe it was enough when Henry Ford was there. Today it's not enough. As a leader to succeed in this world, you need to drive your authenticity, and that starts with self. You need to be able, you need to dare, you need to have the courage to be vulnerable. Now that's a bit of a difficult expression maybe, but what is vulnerability? Vulnerability is the acceptance that you're fallible, the acceptance that you will make mistakes. You are not that buttoned up leader that doesn't accept no for an answer, that doesn't accept any errors, any mistakes. You need to go and demonstrate to your organization that you are fallible, that you've made mistakes, and therefore set the tone, set the expectation, and drive the culture for everybody else to do that as well. It's throwing down the mask, throwing down the armor, being your true self. And that requires courage. That is not easy to do, particularly not when leaders have been conditioned to be the buttoned up person that I described earlier. By the way, interestingly, for those who are French schooled, I saw some people from Canada. I'm not sure where you are from, Canada, and maybe your French is not as good at all. But courage, obviously, the root of the word courage is from heart, right? Cœur. And so that's why the symbol of the heart is very apt here. So have the courage to be vulnerable, throw down the armor, and set the right tone for the organization. Absolutely critical. And then once you've done that for yourself, you got to go and really reach out to the others. Be in touch with your people. And by the way, that's even more important now than it was already before COVID. People are so isolated, so much, worn down, so much stress, so much burnout. And so please go out of your way to go and be in touch with your people, with your organization. Show empathy, drive empathy, express empathy, and learn to listen. Leadership has always been associated with speaking. Back to that old leader who knew what to do, express it to others, right? Leadership is becoming more and more about listening. And I call that listening generatively. Open your mind, listen generously, and then listen generatively, actively engage in a conversation. And that's how innovation pops, right? This is why you get to the conversations where 1 + 1 become 3 and not some measly 1.5 compromise. And when you go and take this on, you approach this, my God, you're going to find that you're going to be so much more connected with self. You're going to be so more congruent with who you are. And as a consequence, the relationship that you build with others is much more constructive, but also satisfying, not for you and for others. So authenticity behind vulnerability and empathy. That's point number 2. And the third part of my holy trinity of inclusive leadership is creating that psychological safety. And this is a title from a monthly letter which I wrote when I was in Japan at P&G. When was it? 2005, I guess. So it's quite a while ago already. I've always been fascinated by culture, and this was the header: when people have fun and are fulfilled, innovation will thrive. This was a well-received monthly report that created quite a bit of visibility and interest in the company. What is psychological safety? Psychological safety is a climate where people feel safe enough to take interpersonal risks by speaking up, sharing concerns, questions, or sharing concerns, questions, or ideas. And so think about, one example. The dominant leader sits there at the head of the table, the meeting is finished or almost finished, and he says, okay, we all agree, right? Let's go and let's get this done. But you are sitting there and you know that one important subject wasn't discussed. What are you doing? The $1 million question, right? The $1 million moment. Are you going to go and raise your hand and say, sir, excuse me, but no, I don't think so. I think we should still, talk about this. Or are you going to go away and not express your voice? And ultimately it can lead to disaster. So learn to speak up, have the courage to speak up in this case. Also, if you create this psychologically safe environment, it allows you to have that, that 1+1 conversation I just said, with a bit of friction, with a bit of creative abrasion. Innovation doesn't happen when everybody is a yes man or yes woman. You need that diversity to go and be expressed with different views, and then have a constructive conversation on the subject matter, not at a personal level, not at the emotional level, but on the subject matter. That's how inventions happen. That's how innovation happens. So psychological safety is absolutely critical. Some people call it's the brake of an organization. If you don't have psychological safety, the brake is on. If you create psychological safety, it opens up for people to bring their best self to work and express it, and not be attacked or punished for it. So there you have it, the essence of my inclusive leadership model: mind, heart, and gut. And maybe I want to leave here before I turn it over to Alexia. Is for me, if you want to unleash the collective intelligence of your diversity, and with emphasis here on your multicultural diversity, but of course, diversity from all its angles, you got to go and be able to be in touch with your people, with your organization, but also with yourself, and not only with your mind, with your heart and your gut as well. So with that, I hope I stayed within my 15 minutes. You can beat me up if I didn't, Karina, but I think it was pretty close. So I will stop sharing and turn it back to you, Karina, because you want to introduce Alexia.
Thank you so much for your insights, John, and the inspirations around inclusive leadership. And I would like to introduce Alexia. I'm going to bring up her impressive profile here. Let's see. Oh, where are we going? There we go. There's Alexia. So I'm very happy to welcome Alexia Cassimatis, as I mentioned, Global Talent Development Director at Egis. And she has enjoyed a very successful international career in leading and developing global talent and diversity programs around the world as well. Globetrotter, and has enjoyed assignments in China, North America, Europe, and for companies such as Manitou Group, Deloitte, Ferrero, Nokia, Alcatel-Lucent. And she is currently responsible for talent, global talent, but also developing inclusion and diversity program, or diversity and inclusion, excuse me, at Aegis. She has launched a great initiative and is currently very much involved in looking at how to develop a program that will empower the leaders at Aegis and also ensure they meet their performance requirements for this changing world. So very excited to hear more about Alexia's perspectives, as well as her case or a study on what is happening at Aegis. So Alexia, welcome. We look forward to.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Karina. So I'll share my screen as well. Let's see here. Okay. So as Karina said, I've been working in leadership development, talent development for over 15 years, and diversity and inclusion has been a common thread across nearly all the companies that I've worked for. This journey that I'm going on with Egis, so that we're starting together, is one that I've gone through in the past as well. So I wanted to give just a few words about Egis. So it's basically an engineering company. We are specialized in sustainable cities, transport, water, and energy. And we offer services starting from consulting through project structuring, engineering, turnkey solutions, operations, and even mobility services. So we have our business units in urban, in rail, aviation, roads, ports, and then working in the energy sector and water treatment as well. So it's 1.7 billion company with 77% is in engineering and 23% is in operations and mobility. So we're actually operating toll roads, maintenance services for rail and roads. We have 16,000 people around the world. 58% are in consulting and engineering. And we are like majority, originally a French-based company, but is now we're now very much international as well. I've put the values here because I think, what is interesting about Aegis is one of the few companies I've worked for where you really do see the values on an everyday basis. And this responsibility being at the center is really true. When I speak to leaders and employees around the company, people talk to me about why they're at Aegis. It's really linked to their desire to make a positive impact on the world. And bringing their passion for that, as well as their passions for their expertise. So we really are, a company which is focusing on people, and our technical skills are extremely important, and also on innovation and creativity. And it's really relevant for the diversity and inclusion journey that we're going on. So as I said, we've got a majority of our employees are working abroad, but our base is really in France. So, in my past experience working on how to create a more inclusive company culture, you really have to look at three interlocking areas, because the issue of inclusive leadership is really a systemic one. So you have to look at the entire context. So that is the employee life cycle. We're looking at policies, process. How are we doing things? Are we ensuring that we are indeed, enabling an equal opportunity workplace, and in the language we use, in the way that we ensure that we are getting the best out of our talent throughout the employee life cycle. Then we need to look at each organization, because each organization is like, especially within Aegis, they're like mini companies. And so the context can be different in terms of, where they are in terms of leadership maturity, or where they are even geographically, and what makes sense for their business. And then finally, we need to support individuals and managers. And I say managers here because a lot of programs focus on, for example, with gender diversity, they focus on how can we support women employees. However, in order for an organization to change, I think, as you might know, we need to start and look at leaders and at managers, the ones who are making the decisions that have an impact on the people around them. So it's really making sure that we're putting as much emphasis on supporting leaders to become more inclusive, and then we are at looking at our diverse populations and ensuring that they feel supported and included. So when I started at Aegis, I took the same approach as I have in past companies that I've worked for, which is you've got to make it data-based. So you've got to look at where are you right now? and looking at as much information around recruitment, around who gets developed, around who gets promoted, who leaves, who stays, who's at each level, who are in, in the different job families, and so on. Once you have that data, you start to have some questions. And that's where you then need to get leaders on board. And from getting them on board and understanding where they come from, you can then go to actions, objectives, your timeline, roadmap, information plan, and of course, progress. So I'm just going to go through this very, very quickly. So the first step that we took is first of all to get the commitment from the CEO. So the first thing when I was asked to take over this this initiative from our VP of HR, the first thing I did was have a conversation with our CEO, Laurent Germain. Why is this important? Why should we do this? There are so many things that we need to do that people are focusing on. What is your drive and motivation as a CEO to have greater diversity and inclusion? And he was absolutely adamant that this was something that's related to ensuring we have the best talent, ensuring that we reflect the market and our customers, and ensuring that our leaders are able to manage multicultural teams as we become more international. So with that commitment, I then went and met with each leader of our businesses. So they're called the business unit CEOs. And I took the information from each of their organizations and asked them, why is this a business imperative for your business unit? Why is it important? Because we have so many things to do. It needs to be compelling, not just for you as a leader, but you need to be able to talk about why is it compelling for your organization. It's not just a nice to have sort of thing, but you be convinced of the value of it. And then we look at the statistics. We look at, all right, what is the situation? What's blocking? And then what things are you going to do to improve? So this conversation is about building their awareness, because I've worked enough on this topic to know that when I hear things like, yes, well, we have women leaving our pipeline at the managerial level because they start to have families. They're less interested in in development opportunities, in going abroad, and so on. So when I hear those things, I then talk to them about the studies that have been done, saying that women actually have equal levels of ambition, but when they don't see the development opportunities that others get, they lose momentum, they lose some of that ambition, and they feel like, well, I guess I can take a step back. There might not be a future for me here. And so with every question that the leaders might pose around why should we do this, how should we do this, I can actually come back with some of the studies that show really the reality that they might not see. So that's the first step, is to educate our leaders and to get some actions. So here are some of our leaders. These are not all of them, just a few that came out. So I think what's really important is that they also see themselves. What are the other leaders saying? Because as you see that these are our COMEX members. They need to feel that also, the variety of different reasons, because it's very important then that each leader is able to, is really able to talk about, and that's this pyramid here, to have a vision as to why this is important, and that they need to hold other managers accountable for this. So if out of this is this link between diversity and inclusion, and how does this link to our strategy for growth? We want to go into more markets. We need to have leaders. We need to have teams that reflect those markets. So for each business unit, we really crafted a strategy and an action plan, and asked them as leaders to not just to hold themselves and others accountable, but also to put in actions for themselves that are going to make a difference. So as a first step, we just looked at, okay, where should we improve? Where can leaders get involved and engaged? And we have a lot of good practices that exist, that have existed for years in France, in India, in Brazil. We need to really put these together. We are also looking at, we're getting at the moment accreditation by some internationally recognized assessment bodies, so to benchmark ourselves. And we're really looking at how can we, again, address the issue as a systemic one. So it's around our policies and our procedures. And it's also really around awareness and communications, right? So that's the most important step at the beginning of a journey such as this. And finally, of course, to ensure that we're providing support. So we have mentoring programs for diverse talents. We have signed up to partnerships to help increase the visibility and support to diverse groups, and also raise awareness among managers, and also giving network opportunities. So at a group level, we're focusing on ethnicity, nationality, gender, and disability. Those are the ones that we can most easily track, but also that are most global. And then for each business unit, some have, for example, in Brazil, they said, well, we need to really work more on the LGBTQ area because it's more reflective of what's asked of us in Brazil, for example. And again, in some areas, in some of our BUs, they say we need more innovation in terms of the educational background of people, not just engineers, but people who really come from different walks of life. And we've also set objectives. So looking objectives around recruitment, succession planning, development, career progression, and also on awareness. And we set, of course, a sponsor. And when I asked the XCOM, first question was, all right, who would like to be a sponsor? And then we nominated one of the heads of our largest business units, who is a man. And someone at the time, one of the other leaders there said, but why don't we appoint a woman? And my response to that is, we're going to be, the role of a sponsor is to convince the 75%, 70% of the people within this organization who are men. So we need a man to be speaking about why it's important, because we need to have someone who's going to be, kind of reflect the people they're speaking to, in fact, and also be someone who is going to be themselves very influential in supporting greater diversity within his own, for this year, is really to build awareness. Because without managers, and when I say, of course, leaders, it's easy in a way for them to say, yes, I support diversity and inclusion, but it's the managers at N-2, N-3, N-4 levels who, they have a million things on their plate. So they think, oh my gosh, this is one more thing. So we need to, first of all, have all of the levels of leaders be able to give a compelling message as to why diversity and inclusion is important for the business, for our strategy, for things like innovation. How does that link to people's core purpose? And then once we understand the why, is to help them commit to those everyday actions that will make progress. Because being an inclusive leader, it's not about big programs. It's about doing something every day, small things every day that make a difference. So we're really working on helping leaders understand what are some of those everyday things. For example, I had a leader telling me about how he's an IT leader, saying how he had an important role on his team that he needed to fill. He asked the recruiter, an external headhunter actually, to help him find the best profile. And the short list of candidates that he got back were all men. So he said to the headhunter, I need to see some diversity in this short list. Please go away and come back with more diversity in the short list. recruiter went away, came back, again, all men. He said, okay, listen, go away. I'm not going to even look at these until you tell me that there are, that I see a diverse slate of candidates. And third time, he had 3 excellent women candidates, and he ended up hiring actually 2 of them. So these are, it's not only, you know, it's something that you have to make a bit more of an effort, but you end up, you know, getting sometimes a much more impactful team than you had started with in the beginning. Looking, how am I doing for time? I think I'm almost at the end here. So by sharing some of those stories, by talking to leaders about what are the everyday things they can do to ensure that their teams are inclusive, that they themselves are more conscious about how they can be more inclusive. I think some of the things that John said earlier is very much linked to what we were saying. You know, be curious, know about your own prejudices and perhaps unconscious biases, being a role model and holding people accountable, and then supporting your team, right? Ensuring that everyone has a place at the table, and just small things, ensuring that on a Zoom meeting, everyone is speaking, being aware of what are the challenges of different diverse groups, and understanding what the barriers could be and how you can do something to help them. And then the third thing is also on the network. You know, what we know that one of the most powerful emblems of a leader today is the ability to animate, to build, to enlarge their network. And so this is very key, that leaders support diverse profiles by opening up their network, enabling their network, and also using their network to share and promote best practices in D&I. So that's it. I'm happy to get any questions and any comments. I think I'm on time.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for all of the great insights and practices around diversity inclusion. Alexia, I'm going to invite both of you to the virtual stage, so John and Alexia. And I see we are getting a lot of questions. So I'm going to share those questions with you and then come around with a wrap-up question. And just to make sure we have enough time for our audience so let's kick it off with the first question. And that would be from Mahan Amarnat. What's diversity like at senior management levels at Aegis? So I think you gave us an indication, but maybe
yeah.
You can provide
so actually,
more
at our COMEX, we have 4 women among the 9 COMEX members. However, our head of innovation and sustainability is a woman. She has an engineering background. Our head of legal, corporate governance is a woman. Our head of HR is a woman. So this sounds familiar, right? These are the support functions. The heads of our BUs are women. The heads of our BUs are men. But in the levels just below, we actually have some very impressive, for example, one of our women, our senior women in our rail business division, she is in charge of the project for the Grand Paris project, which is the enlarging of the metro network around Paris. And so she's managing a good 250 people for that, the extension of line 16. So we also have a woman who's in charge of our sustainability services. So we have leaders at the COMEX support functions, and we have leaders one level down. But that's the challenge we're looking to face. I think what's encouraging is that I'm in charge of our people reviews, so our succession planning and people reviews. And one of the things that we are doing is insisting that all of our people reviews, we are reviewing women talent or diverse talent, and in putting them a special attention to make sure that there's visibility on them and in our succession plans for our group key positions. It's one of our objectives.
Okay, we have another question from Lokesh Venkataswamy around for women in the workplace. So the current schooling system is a big tax on women to take care of their children and so forth, which hinders their career interests as kids' education is a priority. What are your thoughts?
Do I answer that?
situation.
Does John want to answer it? I mean, I can answer it, but I don't want to take all the...
Yeah, I think it specifically said Alexia, but then we
Is
can
it for me?
to
Oh,
John
okay.
too. Have
Okay.
both the
I would love to have a man's. So you know, I've had an international career, and I'm a woman, and so you know, it's not just women who have children, right? Men have children too, and I can talk not just for myself, but even studies that have been done, that in countries where it is difficult for women to have childcare, and it is where it is difficult for women to have careers and children, usually there's a lower birth rate. I mean, if I look at in Europe, at least, if we look at Switzerland or Germany, places where it's difficult for women to both work and have children, they tend to have fewer children because they choose to work. So the more that societies, that companies can do to make it possible, first of all, for everyone, not just men, I mean, not just women, men too want to have flexibility. And I think newer generations also, men want to have more time with their families. And we're hearing this from not just our, actually, we don't really hear it as much from our women. I hear it more from our men, actually, saying that they want more balance. And that's the responsibility of companies to do that, because it's not just going to benefit, it's going to benefit families, or it's going to be anybody who wants to have a work-life balance. So my thoughts are that I don't think that it's true that women choose family over work. I think that might be put upon them. Did I answer the question?
Any thoughts, John, before we go to the next question?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I talked about too
much. John, you're on mute.
You're on mute. Nope, still on mute.
Yeah. No, I was talking to myself. How do I get off mute? You know, in general, I think we have to be indeed sensitive to these things. But because women, just McKinsey did the research recently. You know, employees. Let me see here. Women, female employees. This is November 2020, right? And this is really, you know, illustrating the pressure that keeps coming back on women because COVID has made it worse.
Yes.
Female employees are 1.5 times as likely as male employees to be concerned about challenges with mental health and balancing household responsibilities. Yeah. So, but the interesting thing is when you look at employees of color in the US, employee and LGBTQ plus employees are also 1.5%. So, you know, yes, be sensitive to women, but I always like to make sure that we look at diversity holistically. And that particularly when it comes to innovation and how you unleash an organization, as I just mentioned, you know, diversity inclusion is such hard work. It requires such an integrated program. And I was actually encouraged to look at what you just showed here, all these different elements, because it needs to be addressed systemically across, you know, all levels of diversity, you know, born or acquired. And so anyway, that's the point I wanted to reinforce.
Yeah.
That's a response to another comment we have on definition of diversity seems to stop at women.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
As John emphasized.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, the thing is that within a company, you easily can measure women, actually, because for the most part, it is the easiest to measure. Our challenge in a company is that, you know, our databases, it's very difficult for us to measure ethnicity. And being in France, we're not allowed to. We can measure nationality. But even so, well, is nationality, you know, if you're measuring nationality at Aegis and you're looking at India, you know, for India, it's caste or it's religion, which is maybe more relevant. So it really is very local. And ultimately, I want to say that diversity is just everybody thinks differently. So we want to get the best out of people who think differently. That's one part. And the other part is, of course, men and women are different. We're not the same. Well, actually, nobody is the same, right? But at least, you know, you have to be aware of the different ways that different people think. How can I say this? You know, to encourage that. I'm not being you're much more eloquent than me, John. What you were saying.
I don't think so, but Eileen is making an interesting comment in the comments to say that, you know, it's easier to go for women as focus on diversity because it is optical. You can measure it more easily, and that's what we have to get beyond. And that's the push that I would give leaders: is guys, diversity is not a numbers game, or it shouldn't be, or inclusion definitely is not a number. It should be. How do you, exactly what you just said, Alexia? How do you include all the diversity of all kinds so that you get the best collective intelligence? You get the best out of your collective intelligence of your organization. And diversity and the emphasis can be so different between one country, as you highlighted, versus another.
Yeah. And Sophie Lechner also added to that, what about differences in ability? Neurodiversity is a huge part of diversity.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in the end, I would love it if we would maybe, I mean, one of the challenges I think that organizations have is that there's a bit of fatigue sometimes around, okay, gender diversity, women, and it's a bit unfortunate because women are not minorities, they're 50% of the population. And yet we don't see much progress. I've been looking at gender diversity for over 15 years. I don't, unfortunately, I think things are getting better. I wouldn't say that things are getting better, but we don't see 50% at the top of companies. But you know, that being said, I think, you know, absolutely we have to let's not just focus on one. You know, let's not only focus on women. Let's just think about differences, right?
Yeah, we have another question. We're running out of time, so I want to make sure we can answer this question as well, which would be for both of you. I could see both of you responding to this. Great examples about diversity and inclusion. Are you also focusing on the sense of belonging as a further stage of integration and ultimately creating well-being as a policy?
Yeah.
Sorry, Alexia, go.
Ahead. Oh, well, sense of belonging. So for us at Aegis, at least, it's a step-by-step process. We have to figure out, people have to understand why, and also to understand that, because I think if you ask people, they would say, of course everyone belongs, you know, so we need to educate, what does it mean to include people who you might not think that you are excluding them, but you are. So for us, it's a next step. We're starting off with the why first and the how. Go ahead.
And then maybe I can take that on and say, so it will be a next step for you, but also there's steps beyond that, because be really careful on belonging. Belonging drives groupthink. Everybody wants to belong and doesn't want to say anything different, but that's not what you want in an organization, right?
Yeah.
You want to create a psychological safety so that everybody gets into the creative vibration kind of conversation and raises the hand when there's an issue. So yes, sense of belonging is a stepping stone towards an even better organization, a truly inclusive organization.
Yeah. Excellent point.
And we have one more comment from Jeremy Solomons about the responsibility and roles of organizations leading non-performative, sustainable, systemic D&I change and social justice within their communities and society in general. A lot to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a part of the, as I said, I mean, Aegis has sustainability at its core as a core value, and that's why we want to go further. It's something that we also are required by our clients actually to do, and so, you know, it's something that we can't say no to. Say we have to keep progressing.
Well, it's time for my wrap-up question. Going back to our topic on inclusive leadership and multicultural innovation, what do you both feel would be one step or action that organizations need to address this year to one step closer to developing more inclusive leadership, especially as it involves a multicultural population?
Maybe I'll start and say you need to go and really ladder up inclusion to a very broad concept that becomes almost pervasive for your organization. Get beyond the numbers. That is so absolutely critical. And you want to drive your psychological safety high. So do you go and you know, you even generate different levels of psychological safety. You have inclusion safety, but you also have learning safety. You have contribution safety. You have challenger safety. And that is a whole journey which actually we can help people with. And then the last comment maybe is I also work for the conference board, quite a bit, and we'll deal with the senior business leaders. I was in a recent advisory board, and probably the smartest guy in the room. We were talking about what's the biggest priority for next decade, and sustainability, digital, and he said inclusion. And I go like, whoa, that is really, that guy is right on the mark. So I think we're going to see much more of this topic in the future, and it warms my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really going to be that each leader on an individual basis understands for themselves, where they are in terms of their own, let's say maturity, is questioning themselves and identifying an action, even if it's just one action to do to promote greater inclusivity, right? As an organization, we can do things, but ultimately it comes down to what are individual leaders going to do on an individual basis as well to put things in place.
Excellent. And thank you so much for your valuable insights and inspirations for this webinar. A big thank you and grand merci to John Metselaar and Alexia Cassimatis. And thank you to our audience. I still keep seeing wonderful comments.
Thank you for all the great comments.
Great
I love it.
feedback and conversations. And I wish we could go on for another hour.
Are you going to save these? I'd like to look at them. I didn't have a chance to look at all the comments, and because there are some great ones there.
And we have additional comments from Brigitte Serfontaine too, and
the world and the companies to benefit. My friend says, yes, definitely.
So I'll share this.
The Apex for IT services.
We'll follow up with a thank you email and try to share the comments and additional thoughts from this webinar. We also have, we'll be able to provide you with the video of the webinar as well for those who have attended. And I'd also like to remind everyone that we do have our upcoming webinar on Thursday, May 27th. So next stop on our readiness journey. And that will be with my colleague, international product leader and innovator Thomas Arendt, who's based in San Francisco and has a fascinating career. He's worked for all the big GAFA, or the big high-tech giants, from Google to Airbnb, and now he's at Johnson & Johnson. So he has led international product initiatives and worked with teams all over the world. So I'll be joining him to present on the topic of mastering team alignment and collaboration. So please join us. You have more info on our webinar series there at the link. And you can stay updated via our LinkedIn company page, and we'll be sending more info to you soon. We've got our playbook that we want to share with you, and much more. So thank you again, everyone, and take care and stay safe out there. Enjoy your innovation journeys.
Thanks for engaging.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.